Welcome to the Traveler 2025 Mayday event. I'm your host, Frank Zuccardi of Cyborg Prime Games, and I'm here in the studio with Mr. Matthew Sprange, the Managing Director of Mongoose Publishing. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me again.
Thank you for coming. You've been supporting this event since the beginning, and I really appreciate it, so thank you very much.
Always a lot of fun.
Last year we had we had some fun with the game show and some other weird stuff, but I don't know what I'm going to do this year. We'll see. It's the event's growing, and it's just me and a couple of volunteers, Greg Karras and his crew, who do the online gaming. So it's but it's cool to grow, and I'm happy to do it. Anyway, so let's talk about Let's talk about what you've been up to since last Mayday. You've released a few products and some other things have happened. You want to talk about some of your products like Warfleets or opening moves or any of those?
Yeah. Okay. So Warfleets and opening moves, both part of the Fifth Frontier War series. And what we're doing there is it's kind of like a subline for us. Don't know how many books it's going to have yet. There's probably going to be quite a few. And what we're trying to do is take people through the entire Fifth Frontier War from start to finish. At the moment, we're alternating between wide-scale source books and adventures. The idea being that if you play through everything, you can put your travelers right in the front seat of the entire war. Now, we're doing this from a variety of perspectives. So, for example, if you do end up playing the entire Fifth Frontier War, you're going to have several different groups of travelers, and we will come back to ones that have been introduced in the past. So, for example, you might have Pro-Zodani agents that the travelers are playing. You might have someone more aligned with the Vargir or the Imperium. There is going to be an adventure coming up where you're playing the bridge crew of a Sword Worlds commerce raider. Opening moves is kind of like the intro for your typical trader type travelers. So it's right at the start of the war. The travelers will be bimbling around doing their own thing, and they don't know anything about the war. All of a sudden, the Zodani attack, and the whole of opening moves is basically the travelers on the cusp of the wave. They're trying to flee towards the Imperium ahead of the constantly jumping Zodani and, as it happens, Sword World forces. Of course, being your travelers, they could end up in a position where they have a major effect on what's happening in that area of space. They're going to not spoil anything. They're going to end up on the bridge of an Imperial warship, and they will have the opportunity, whether they take it or not, to be able to give orders to an Imperial fleet. So whether they surrender, try to fight their way out, or do something else, they're travelers. Who knows what they're going to do? But that's the point of opening moves. It's kind of like if you're just running your standard traveler campaign, this is the one that gets them into the Fifth Frontier War. The other one you mentioned, Warfleets of the Fifth Frontier War, isn't another ship book. I mean, it's got some new warship designs in there, and it goes through them, but it goes into them in far greater detail. I mean, normally we do the deck plans, the stats, and here's anything from a quarter to a full page of description about the ship. Here you get a few pages on each ship. It's really digging into detail, but the bulk of the book is more about how the fleets are structured, where they're placed, their doctrines for actually fighting, why they're doing what they're doing in the Fifth Frontier War. It's really digging into that level of detail to give the referee a wide scope of how the big fleets are working, how that will affect travelers at the smaller end, and basically be a book for to provide background material to draw upon for adventures going forward. So as I say, we're trying to balance letting people know what's happening on the big chessboard. It's always with the intention of drilling it down to the actual game table, what your travelers are doing.
How do you come up with like the rules for that? Is that modeled after real life Navy structure, or how how do you come
Yeah,
up? How do you determine those rules or convert them?
well, it's you will certainly find a lot of real world Navy elements being drawn upon for them. But also, this is the great thing with Traveller. We got nearly 50 years worth of background where people have sat down and worked on this before. So we're able to compare and contrast. This is what the Imperium is doing. How do the Zodani do it different? How do the Sword Worlds do it different? Why is that? I mean, the Sword Worlds always trying to punch above their own weight. They don't have the resources, the Imperium. So how do they function in an actual war? And that's the kind of thing we're looking at.
Hmm. Are there rules for fleet combats in there detailed, or
No. I mean, we do have.
where would be the place to find that? Like, is there like a companion book that might go with this for fleshing out the?
At the moment, if you want to do more than one ship on one ship, Highguard does have the facility to boil all the ships down, ship stats down into a fleet combat setting.
Hmm.
But at the same time, that is kind of more intended for two or three ships on each side, or one big ship against half a dozen smaller ones.
Hmm.
Um, we haven't done the massive. Here's the huge fleet invading the entire star system yet, and I am very reluctant to do that in an RPG. I think that's a miniatures game.
I was just as you were talking, I was thinking, the more you get into like fleet combats and stuff, the farther you're getting away from a role playing game and
Exactly.
into like a tactical, like a Starfleet battles, or like
Yeah.
like you say, a miniatures game. Hmm.
I think that's the arena for it. That said, we are looking a few years further down the line to create a new subline of Traveller that focuses specifically on bridge crew campaigns, and we'll
Hmm.
need to tackle that question in terms of an RPG. I think we'll be, in a way, abstracting how spacecraft work when fighting each other, but that's a project way down the line. But no, I think the way to do that is a miniatures game. Again, that's something else we're looking at.
Hmm. All right, cool. Um, all right. Let's talk about. I like that idea of opening moves of being chased by like the invasion wave coming in.
Yeah.
Um, that puts time pressure, on the players, and the military has a lot better, faster ships, so they're going to get ahead of you at some point.
Yes.
But yeah,
Spoiler. Also, should point out, it was when I was going through opening moves the first time. I was thinking like these scenes here, these are really cinematic, and
hmm.
that inspired us to get a bunch of actors down here. And we actually put together. It's only like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, but a film trailer style promo of the adventure. You'll find it on our website and drive through. It's on YouTube as well.
Oh, really?
But we've got the music and the dramatic moments around the table, kind of thing. I don't know if we'll do that for every adventure, but I quite like the idea.
Oh, that sounds fun. Yeah, I'd like to see that. Get me the link or show me where I can find it, and I'll
Will
tag it
do.
along with this. Yeah, I like the Traveler song. Who's that by Tim Cook?
Yes,
Who's
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's a funny little video, and yeah, I like. I'd like to see more of that put out by you guys.
Funnily enough, we were talking about doing another one of those quite recently. I mean, we're building up to the 50th anniversary of Traveller, so we're talking about all sorts of different ideas, fun things we can do, just
Hmm.
little cool little things, and that was one of them.
Yeah, that's cool. Um, let's talk about traders and gunboats.
Yeah, that's
I guess we'll
another.
find traders and gunboats in there, but aside from that, what else?
Fair enough. Yes, I mean that forms a nice little trilogy. I mean, we started off with adventure class ships and brought out the small craft catalogue, and traders and gunboats kind of caps that. Um, I am I'm very hesitant to do yet another ship book. The problem is, A, I enjoy working on them, and B, they're always massively popular. But I don't want Traveller to descend into just here's a whole bunch of ships. On the other hand, charted space is huge. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing, so there is obviously room for this.
Hmm.
And yeah, traders and gunboats adds concentrates specifically on fighty type ships that aren't necessarily warships, and the kind of like I was like merchant type vessels that travelers are likely to be messing around with. So again, we're focusing it very much on what travelers might be flying and what they're likely to encounter. And say on each one, we kind of like try and find something really cool to do with the starship, and that's the focus of the design. Sometimes getting, I mean, on one hand, we might say things are quite silly, but in universe, it's more looked on. Here's a very specialized ship that some corporation has created to achieve a specific objective, like a Jump Six cargo vessel. Well, that's actually not going to carry very much at all. But you can come up with reasons. This is why we need a super fast cargo ship, and you just take that idea and run with it.
Hmm. Do you are all the ships created using the High Guard rules?
They are, yes.
Hmm. And do you guys have like an in-house computer tool that helps you do this, or do you just hash it out on paper?
There are, excuse me, there are some such tools available. By and large, what we're doing is working. We start by working them out by hand, because we do want to retain the ability. Sometimes we twist the rules a little here and there. So something that's rigidly set up with all the core tables won't necessarily give us the results we're looking for. They then get passed to our official ship checker, who basically tries to correct all the errors I obviously put in on purpose to catch him out.
Right.
And then they get released to the wild, and people have the chance to pick up on all the problems that the ship checker deliberately put in to catch them out.
Hmm. Right. All right. That's cool. I was I found a like a shipbuilder Google spreadsheet a while back, and I built a few ships and compared them to the book, and they were within a tolerance that was very acceptable. So it was either right on or within like half a ton or something. I just built a scout ship and a far trader, and they were very close. So
See,
whoever built those tools and put them out there, thank
yeah,
you.
I mean that's actually a good example. Something we perennially do is, as for example, round down uh, on the cargo tonnage allotment, simply because if you're building a scout ship and it ends up with, I don't know, 23.17 tons of cargo, nobody cares about the point 17. And
Hmm.
if you put in, the traveler's going to try and do something stupid. I mean, you're already going to have groups trying to put cargo in staterooms just to carry a bit more on their ship.
Hmm.
But we deliberately say in High Guard, especially when it comes to building things like the deck plans, assume a 10% tolerance above and below the tonnage of each thing you're working on, because not all ships are built the same.
Hmm.
And when it comes to Traveller, I mean, this is, again, there's nearly 50 years of game design history here. I do think things on the shipbuilding side can be a little too literal, and a little too limiting. I do understand why a lot of players do want everything absolutely precise.
Hmm.
That's not necessarily brilliant for storytelling. So maybe if we do High Guard update 2038 or whatever it ends up being, we'll start smoothing those edges a bit more. We do it with the
Hmm.
vehicle handbook. That design system does concentrate far more on the output, what a vehicle's actually capable of, rather than all the components that you use to get there. So
Hmm.
I probably won't. We probably won't do something on with ships in that regard because I think we'll get lynched if we move away from the high guard system
Hmm.
wholesale. But we do want to stress there should be a lot of referee fiat in ship design because not all ships are built the same.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. There's the value to the kind of simulationist aspect of Traveler. Um,
Yes.
but sometimes it clashes with the role playing part. Does it matter if you can fit 1/10 of a ton of cargo more? It doesn't, not in the scheme of things in a role playing game. But you know, and then people can argue all they want about, oh, there's got to be room for conduits and ventilator shafts and hull plating and infrastructure, and that's all true. And but then you got to figure, like, all of that stuff is smaller and lighter the higher the tech goes, and how do you account for that? And how much smaller and lighter is it, for each tech level up? And it could be a nightmare.
Yeah.
You just
On
got
that
to
note,
extrapolate it and just get as close as you can.
absolutely. I mean, there was to give another example, there was a bit of conversation on our forums a little while ago talking about the crew levels in each ship, how many engineers you have, astrogators, what have you. And somebody was saying, "Hang on, these ships here that they're not matching up with the guidelines in High Guard." No, that was absolutely deliberate. If you've
Hmm.
got a mega corporation building their liner or merchant ship, they're going to have as few crew as they possibly can because of the running costs on the ship.
Hmm.
So sometimes we deliberately put that isn't quite enough. You should perhaps have one more engineer on there. No, no, they've cut corners there,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Their
Um,
virtual engineer, he's
yeah.
fine. He works around the
Um,
clock.
we sometimes again tweak things in the other direction. For example, if you've got a massive liner with all the different classes of passage on there, you might find there's not quite enough stewards for the middle passage guys, but there's more than necessary for the high class ones.
Huh. Strange how that happens.
Yes. And so we don't. Sometimes you will find something alluding to that in the description of the ship. Sometimes
Hmm.
we bury it in the stats and leave it for people to figure out during the
Hmm.
game.
Well, that's funny. Uh, Easter eggs, design Easter eggs. That's hilarious. All right. So after Traders and Gunboats, what about Traveler Merchants Edition? Is that a new starter edition?
Italy, yes. I think we'll look at doing revising this once every few years. We did the Explorers edition before, which was way more popular than we thought it would be. It's basically they're basically 72-page books. They were supposed to be 64 pages. We overshot, as is common with our books these days.
Hmm.
But the idea is it has all the core rules of Traveller, but cut the size down. We just focus on one or two careers in the book and the rules that tend to go with them. So with Explorers, it was the additional information was exploring type equipment. It's got the Scout Courier in there, generating worlds and so forth. For merchants, it's the trade rules are in there. I mean, if you get enough of these books, maybe you can put together you won't
The
need
core
to
rulebook.
it's going to be over the other
I
books.
have everything except the psionics. There's no psionics in my world.
But no, if you pick up Explorers or Merchants Edition and one of the free adventures like Death Station, um, you can run Traveller completely for $1 if you
Hmm.
get it online. Um, and that's the purpose of these editions. I mean, in a few years to come, maybe we'll do the Mercenary Edition or Soldiers Edition or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, cool. Um, those are, I think, great ways of, removing the money barrier from people who
Yeah.
want to try. They don't know if they're going to like it. They may have heard some things about the system one way or another, but they might be hesitant to drop $25 or $30 in a core book without checking it out themselves and seeing how fun it is. I mean, it really. It's coming up on 50 years for a reason. This game's got staying power. It really does, because I think people can, like, I don't stick to, I read the source books and I just pick and choose what I want out of them. And so I've been just using Traveller as like a framework for my Traveller universe. And I think a lot of people do. They have in their mind what their space worlds look like. And Traveller is a great framework to kind of hang that on. So you can do your own thing, or you can follow the settings provided by the company. Either way, so it's great. One of the reasons I think it has staying power. Let's talk about the Clans of the Aslan.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That came from a chap called Randy Dorman, who had written the sector book Deep in the Dark. Dark Nebula in Reaver's Deep. But it was one of those manuscripts. We're looking at it that there's too much here. It's going to be like a 500-page book after we add in all the art. So some stuff's going to come out of it. And he'd gone into a lot of detail that we felt was more general about the Aslan rather than specific to those two sectors. So I had a chat to him and said, we're going to pull this information out of it, but there's a core of another book here. Would you like to do something about a book called Clans of the Aslan? And he jumped on it straight away. And what the book does is obviously focus on the clans, but if you're an Aslan traveler, it'll let you create the clan structure that they're going to be sitting within. But at the same time, if you're an Aslan traveler and you've managed to acquire a bit of power, you can create your own clan using this book as well. But it goes into more detail. It looks at how the clans affect and operate within Aslan society as a whole, and that's where it started getting very, very interesting. I was reading it through. It goes into how the power base of female Aslan, for example, they hold all the reins when it comes to the corporations within the High Rate. I'm reading it through and I'm thinking, what we really need to do is an entire campaign, one of our big epic campaigns, where everyone is an Aslan deep within the High Rate. I pitched it to Randy. I kind of pitched it as Game of Thrones with cats. I think he's going to do more with it than that. So that's on the cards. But we also decided before we could do the campaign properly, we need to do the Aslan Empire book. We did Third Imperium a little while ago, and we always intended that would be the start of like a mini line of what we call the Empire books that looks at each of the major powers, details one of the central sectors, but also looks at the history, society, culture. We're planning to do one for like Zodani, Vargir, Hivers, etc. So we figured we ought to do the Aslan one first. So that's what he's working on at the moment, spurred on by what was in Clans of the Aslan. And when that comes out, expect an Aslan campaign to follow. We're probably looking 2 or 3 years for all this to culminate, but that's the line that I'm really looking forward to.
That sounds interesting. All right, cool. What kinds of information will we find in the Clans of the Aslan?
Well, I'd say the core of it is actually how clans are built both within the society and mechanically within the game as well. So you can travelers can find out whether they're part of a minor clan that's been kicked around the High Rate and is barely surviving, or whether they're one of the really big ones. And it also has all the listings for all the major clans, complete with a clan warfare system. So you can abstract when clans go to war with each other over multiple star systems at once.
Oh, cool. Is there like templates or I guess rules for making people can make their own clans?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So yeah, if you get a big strong slam male in your traveler group, no doubt supported and shown exactly what to do by the female Aslan with him, you can claim your own world and create your own clan,
Cool,
and
cool.
then you'd be in a world of trouble. But that's life.
All right, cool. Let's talk about the Great Rift.
That's part of our update series. Every now and again, we don't want to. We have absolutely no intention at the moment of doing a new edition of Traveller, but I've always seen Traveller as a living system in terms of both the background lore and the rules mechanics. So things do need to be kept fresh. They do need to be constantly streamlined and improved, and new ideas integrated into it, which is where the core rulebook updates came from. What we don't want to constantly be retreading old ground. And there is a very good reason we haven't done Pirates of Dranax update yet, if we ever do it at all. But with the Great Rift, we were coming to the end of one of the print runs for it. We took a look at it, thought this could do with a graphical update. We've got our graphic designers and artists have vastly improved since it first came out. So we'll do an update of it. It hasn't got any ground-shakingly new material in it. If you've already got the Great Rift, you do not need to buy this one. In fact, if you bought it from us or Drive-Thru, you've already got the updated PDFs. We gave them out for free because there isn't this massive change. So no, it's a graphical update more than anything. It looks prettier now.
All right, cool. What about the Borderland?
That I talk about not wanting to retread old ground. We'd done a handful of PDF only releases way back in first edition of our Traveller. And I just last year I just came across it almost by accident. Oh yeah, we did do that. I thought this is kind of funky. Perhaps because we're very big on the Trojan Reach. Perhaps this is something that should be revisited, revised, and updated. So I collared Martin, who'd done the original Borderland material. So do you want to expand this out, add 100 or 150 odd pages, make this into a full book? And maybe this is something that people would like to see revisited. The cool thing about the Borderland is if you stick your travelers in Jump One or Jump Two ship, it kind of becomes its own sandbox. They can have all the freedom they like, but it's a limited number of systems, so the referee isn't pulling their hands out as they suddenly jump four in an odd direction at the start of a new session. You
Mm-hmm.
kind of know where they can go and where they're likely to go. So it was just an idea. This could be a nice little almost subsetting within the Trojan Reach for people to dip their toes into, or have a smaller scale traveler campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought it'd be a nice little thing. But looking at the some of the comments readers have been making of it, they really like this idea and asking for more. So I mean, probably we will revisit new areas, the different sectors like this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know where that will be yet.
How many planets on average would you say are in each subsector?
Oh God, it varies greatly. Things start to get very fuzzy when you are dealing with something like the Trojan Reach because it also borders the Great Rift. So there's one subsector with only two worlds in it.
Oh wow.
The,
Mm-hmm.
your average subsector is going to have 20 plus planets in it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's probably a bit much for a book like this. So yeah, it's the little partitioned off clusters that we will be looking for.
Cool. Yeah, that's very frontierish. Even if it's not on the frontier, just because of having the sparseness, you
Yes.
know. Where I live in a rural area, the nearest and Santa Fe is the capital of New Mexico, and our like nearest city is 45 miles away. And the next nearest city is 65 miles away.
Yeah.
So, you know, Um, yeah, it can take a long time to get places, and you know, back in the day when people were traveling these distances by wagon, um, yikes, through the desert and stuff. Hard life. All right. Let's talk about something else exciting that happened last year, which is the Traveler property transfer.
Yes.
So how
Yeah,
did that
we
go?
bought Traveller.
I'm glad. Yeah. So how'd that go? And tell us the story of the Traveler property transfer.
It starts off a fair few years ago. I was talking to Mark about the future of Traveller, and it was rather a tricky conversation. As I said to him, look, this is an agreement between you and me, and whatever you decide's best. But I do have people working here who kind of relying on Traveller for their mortgages and livelihood. Can we do anything about that? And his initial idea was he didn't have any family interests tied to Traveller. So what he would end up doing in the event of, the inevitable, was he would have Traveller signed over to us, um, which was great news. I went away, had a little think, and went back to him and say, how would it be if we gave you some monies for Traveller right now? Because as far as from our point of view, it was a wonderful gesture from Mark to say when this will be travelled to you in eventuality. But what a company needs that has staff rely on it is security and stability. We needed to kind of have a path that we knew what was going on. I mean, God forbid Disney comes along and offers Mark 4 billion for Traveller, and it kind of stuffs us over. So we said, well, I'll tell you what, Mark, we'll give you some monies. How would that be? And he was receptive to the idea. And of course, the question comes in with how much is it going to cost? And we kind of had different ideas because we knew that there had been discussions in the past about someone purchasing Traveller, and we knew the big figure they were talking about them. We also had been talking to Mark, just as an aside, Space 1889 had been purchased, and we kind of knew how much that had gone for, which was a much lower amount. So Mark said it can't go for that lower amount. We said, well, it can't go for that big amount. So I'll tell you what, Mark, figure out how much it's worth. And we kind of had an idea what he came back with. It was a bigger figure, but I actually said to Mark, do you know what? It's you, Mark. We're not going to haggle with you. We'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took about a year for everything to be tied together on a legal front because Traveller was nearly 50 years old. It's gone through different ownerships all that time. There was a lot of material that had been done by licensees and third parties going back to the classic Traveller days. Things like the FASF books, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark had managed to bring a lot of that back under the fold, so that would be transferred as well. But proving that he had the legal right to do that, that was the trick. And it took about a year for Mark to put together all the documentation. It's a stack of papers like this. And there was, we hived out some things being right from the start. We said it'd be kind of unthinkable if you, Mark being Mark, couldn't continue with your T5 and the Traveller fiction. So we've got an arrangement built into it that Mark can do pretty much what he likes with Traveller fiction and T5. And then in the event of the inevitable, it all gets folded back into one place. Mark chipped in a few things himself, like, for example, some of the old GDW board games, things like Dark Imperium and Fifth Frontier War, that weren't specifically Traveller. They weren't Traveller branded at any time, but they are
Mm,
obviously Traveller adjacent. They
right.
weren't included in the property transfer to begin with, but Mark, off his own back, folded them into the agreement specifically because he said. If he doesn't do this, those board games are just going to disappear off the face of the earth. Whereas now they have a home and always a potential that something can be done with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's the long and short of it. Mark wanted to keep this fairly quiet, and we said absolutely no problem with that. There's no reason to trumpet this from the rooftops for any reason other than ego, and we're just not interested in doing that. I did point out to him because of the various licenses that were attached to Travel Island, various miniatures and card games and things. Because of that, and because of the nature of some of the fans being very, very close to the development, to what's going on behind the scenes of Traveller, there was absolutely no way that this was going to be kept secret. I mean, the original idea was that there was to be some announcement made in the event of Mark's inevitable. I said it's never going to be kept that long. So the next target we made was, I'll tell you what, we'll make this announcement on Traveller's 50th anniversary, which at the time would have been what, 3 years keeping this secret. I said we'll make best efforts. There's no way someone isn't going to open their mouths because we're talking to people who've licensed the uh, licensed Traveller for their own product lines, and we can indeed did approach them and said, or Mark did, and explain to them, Mongoose is looking after all the administrative side of Traveller, so sign license royalty checks over to them now, which was true, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out what was going on. And I said somebody would inevitably talk at some time. So I mean, we got 9 months
Mm-hmm.
out of it, so that I figured that wasn't too bad.
Yeah, the community was like being super sleuths. I saw around on your forums and stuff, people like speculating, like, I'm pretty sure this is happening, and other people like, well, they haven't announced it yet, so it's not happening, and like, there
Yeah,
was some debate
well,
going back and
yeah,
forth.
we were monitoring that, and
Uh-huh.
we saw a post. So it might have been on the Traveller Reddit page, but we saw, yeah, this is going to break, and it's going to break within a couple of days. Mark, we have to do something. We have to make an announcement. So he put something together, and then it all happened.
Mm-hmm.
By comparison, we also a little later that year picked up Twilight 2000 and 2300. That was smooth as anything in comparison.
Awesome, awesome. Wow, you got a lot of different. You got all the properties and all the adjacent ones, and wow, man, I think you'll. My experience with your company so far is that I think you're going to be good stewards of those products, and I wish you all the best with them.
That's
Fantastic.
precisely how we see it. It's there's nearly 50 years of history behind us. And yeah, we see ourselves as stewards and just hoping we don't stuff it up too bad.
It's got to change a little bit to stay competitive and move into the future, and to be around for the next 50 years. So, um,
Exactly,
you
yes.
know. So yeah, cool. Congratulations to you on your good fortune, and I'm glad that that happened. While Mark is still with us, instead of the alternative, because that number one is a little ghoulish and could just be looked at very not favorably. But the fact that he did it while he's still around, and everybody knows that uh, it has his blessings, and uh, and it's and everybody knows how everybody feels about it. There can be no question. So
But that's yes, I mean that's Mark's always said that one of his inspirations, if that's the right word for this, was what happened with Greg Stafford.
Chaosium.
Yes, and
Mm-hmm.
Chaosium. Um, it was all planned before the inevitable happened with Greg, so there was just
Hmm.
a smooth continuity. It didn't get frayed or split apart by competing
Hmm.
interests. It was all set in place.
Right, right. Yeah, and from what I've seen, they the new owners did not take Chaosium in a crazy different direction. So
No,
it looks like
no.
it's just continuity, and it's good. And I think that's what we're as users of your product are hoping and looking forward to continuity of the just continuing the products that we all love. And so thanks for doing that. Um, let's talk about the endings of the Fifth Frontier War and the Ancients campaign and how they affect canon.
Yes, that's a good one. Okay, yeah. This is especially relevant because we've said that the ending, the final results, as it were, of the Fifth Frontier War are fluid. We're not actually going to decide how the Fifth Frontier War ends. Every referee and group of travelers will decide that round their table, and whatever happens, whether it's an effective stalemate, whether the Imperium give the Zodani a bloody nose, whether the Zodani gather up everyone who's ever hated the Imperium into one Fremen-like jihad and goes tearing into a core sector, that's going to be down to each group, and whatever they decide will be canon. You've got a similar thing with the Ancients campaign, where the travelers can become effectively as the ancients were themselves, with obviously um, universe shattering possibilities. Again, um, whatever happens in your own game will be canon. Um, this becomes again particularly relevant. We're going to be doing the Singularity campaign. Going to be coming out in just a few months, actually. And again, that's got an ending that could have, shall we say, Imperium shaking consequences as well. Um, Firstly, on that note, we are not every big campaign we do is going to be like this. It's just we've had a run of three of them all at once. We will be focusing more on the smaller scale stuff. Um, but this is, in a way, in the best traditions of science fiction, where you can take the everyman that is your common traveler, and they do end up in the center of galactic changing events. So we want to be able to include that in Traveller. The way we handle this came from a conversation we had with kind of like a conference between Mark and one of the writers, Martin, who's working on the Fifth Frontier War. Um, in the nature of canon and how people look upon it with Traveller as you extend the timeline beyond the Golden Age, 1105, 1107, and what have you. Um, GDW went down this route way back when, introducing things like Rebellion, Virus, New Era, all the rest of that, some of which people really loved, some of which people really hated. Um, and so there's always been the question, what do we do about that? Do we ever move beyond 1105, the Golden Age? Do we go into eras of rebellion and what have you? And if we do, how do we handle it that pleases we won't please everyone. How do we do it in a way that pleases most people? And what we've kind of penciled in, this isn't definite, things always subject to change if a better idea comes along, is that if we do a future timeline for Traveller, we will set it way into the future. You're talking 1,000, 2,000 years ahead. So everything that's happening now in the Golden Age can effectively become myth and legend. Therefore, whatever you decide for the Fifth Frontier War will be what happened. It's just that people might not really know about it in this far future setting, which allows us to do these kind of almost what if style campaigns and still let them have a real effect in people's own personal campaigns. If you don't like the idea of travelers with the powers of ancients mucking up the whole of charted space, don't run the Ancients campaign. Fifth Frontier War can be your big event.
Hmm.
Maybe you want to do all the big events, in which case, best of luck to you. But that's kind of what we're thinking. We can let this canon be in the hands of individual referees and groups. If when we come back to the timeline, it's sufficiently far ahead that whatever big thing happened won't have such a powerful effect.
Gotcha. I was going to ask like what the mechanic for that was. So thanks for beating me to the question. Yeah. So that makes sense, and that's a cool idea. All right. Yeah, I guess over time things even out, or not even out, but maybe are not so shaky, or if somebody was like you said, an earth a empire shattering demigod or whatever, they've probably settled down by now, and who knows, moved along, or maybe their realm is just established and you just don't go there.
Yeah, that's not to say that we might not do a campaign set during Rebellion era. Say,
mhm.
it's just it will be subject to exactly the same canon conditions as the end of the Fifth Frontier War, and people can choose whether they want to incorporate that into their own Traveller canon or simply ignore it.
Yeah,
We're not planning to do that at the moment, but it's always an option.
yeah, that's very cool. Let's talk about the Singularity campaign. Without giving too much away, I know you've been working on it. I chat with Chris on the side sometimes, and he fills me in on some of the stuff that's going on. But tell us a little bit about Singularity and what people should expect with that campaign.
Okay, Singularity is going to be our next big epic campaign, the sort that can take 6 months or a year or 2 years to play through in the same style as Deep Night Endeavor or Pirates of Dranax. It will start, it's set in Core Sector, which we detailed in the Third Imperial book, but aside from a few small adventures, we've never really touched that area before. Um, the player's going to be starting off as being hired as the crew of a very, very high-end luxury liner. They are going to have a lot of autonomy, so they will be able to decide the voyage routes that the liner takes. This has the benefit of um, kind of creating a mini sandbox with every voyage they do, because they've got a fairly free choice, but they're kind of guided. It's advantageous to go like in this general direction, or you could go in this one. But once they're set on that, the referee knows exactly which planets they're likely to be going to and can thus do prep. So it all plays out very, very smoothly. Um, the general themes of Singularity will be taking a very, very deep look into the nature of artificial intelligence, or specifically conscious intelligence, how it should be approached, what rights a conscious intelligence, an artificial intelligence should have, um, and how a society can or cannot adjust to its presence if it really is as good as artificial intelligence can be. I don't want to give a huge amount away because I'm just going through the final book at the moment. And as I said, it could potentially have effects on the entire Imperium.
Hmm.
Now that's not written into stone. The campaign as a whole is sandboxy enough that if the travelers say, well, we don't want to go down this route, we actually want to act in opposition to everything that's going on, it lets them do that.
Hmm.
Um, but it really digs into the structure of Imperial Society as it is within the core. They will be rubbing shoulders with all the movers and shakers, some of them very, very high ranking ones. So they'll certainly be dealing with the nobility, but also the big criminal organizations as well.
Hmm.
One of them might be made a knight as well.
Oh, cool. Hmm. All right, interesting. Um, I love sci-fi, so any kind of games with sci-fi tropes are
But yeah, I
great
mean,
for
it's
me.
in a way, it's an attempt to bring kind of like the high concept science fiction to Traveller,
Hmm.
but it can also be played as the Traveller's kicking down doors and shooting off their laser pistols because you can't predict what a Traveller's going to do.
Hmm. Right? Yes. Murder hobos in space on a luxury line. Luxury murder hobos. Um, all right, cool. Let's talk about Traveler and other mediums like film, TV, video games, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, we uh, when we picked up Traveller, we brought with us a few existing licensees. There's a card game that's kind of been in the wings for a bit. Second Dynasty doing their big resin ships and travel figures and what have you.
Hmm.
But we have, I mean, we were doing it for a few years. I mentioned before that the when we picked up Traveller, the official line was we had taken over all administrative functions of Traveller. We'd kind of done that before anyway, because Mark was off doing his own thing with Traveller. So whenever a potential licensee um, wanted to do something with Traveller, they came to us, or if they knew about Mark, if they found Mark, he was tending to pass them. He always passed them on to us to negotiate with anyway. So there's a line of comics out for Traveller from Marcosia.
Hmm.
Um, they've got two series going on at the moment. There's Far Trader, which is going to be a four-book series, four-volume series. The fourth of which is about to come out. I haven't got a date for that yet, but it is going to be very, very soon. And the Rift Breaker series as well. Beyond that, we do have a Traveller video game in the works that's being done by Evil Twin Artworks, who were the people responsible for the video game adaptations of our Victory at Sea World War II naval game series.
Oh, cool.
They're starting off with at the moment it's called Vanguard, which is basically boarding actions during the Fifth Frontier War. So what you'll be doing is building up your boarding force. It's assumed you're on a destroyer or a light cruiser or something, either as the Zodani or the or Imperial Marines. And it's turn-based, 3D isometric boarding action game.
Hmm.
You'll be going onto an enemy ship, hitting specific objectives, building up experience for your troopers are getting ready to hit the next ship in this big fleet battle.
Oh, cool.
Um, so yeah, that's in the works. Um, Beyond that, there's a few things happening on the fiction side of things. We are getting people talking to us about TV and film, both live action and animated. Whether anything happens with that, who the hell knows? There is a strong tendency for people to want to pick up options, and they just sit on it, and maybe something happens, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the agreements they propose just don't make it worth doing. So conversations being had. We'll see if anything happens.
All right, cool. Yeah, people always talk about supposedly travelers connected to the creation of Firefly and some other things like that, but who knows if
Well,
it's
yeah,
true? you know.
well, that specifically we don't know. I tell you the thing we have seen over the past few years is we might be talking to the people on the board of a major video game company or a major Hollywood studio. And we're sitting there, they're saying, well, we might be interested in doing this great Traveller series, it'll be great. And we're sitting there thinking, why the hell are they coming to us? It turns out one of the board members is an old Traveller player.
Oh,
That
interesting.
pops up time and time again.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, well, like I said, it's a highly developed setting. It's been around for 50 years. You can tap stories in any place in there and come up with, even if it's like a totally separate thing that's slightly different from the actual Traveller canon or whatever, it could still exist and be well received by people who love sci-fi and would love to see more of the Traveller influence or see it played out in real life. I get a lot of people interested. I built a 3D scout ship, and people, it's like a couple years old now, but people still contact me. They want to run around inside the scout ship. They just want to have more Traveller experiences. And they're looking for them in different places like comic books and TV and video games. So
there's some things we do ourselves. Things like we started experimenting with Traveller soundtracks. We did Pirates of Genax. We just done another one that's related to JTAS. But there's other areas we'd like to look in. For example, we mentioned the classic board games. I don't think we're really a board games company, so we're always casting about, is there a company that wants to do bring back these board games, perhaps modernize them? Are those board games better off as video games these days?
Mm-hmm.
Miniatures, we mentioned before, something else we're keen to push forward with. Again, I don't think we're really a miniatures company, so we talk to people about possible licenses to run with Traveller. Maybe you'll see that Fleet Combat game after all.
Cool. Or what about bringing back like Traveller actual not pewter, but maybe plastic minis? Or make the designs available on it for STL so people could print them up themselves.
That's what Second Dynasty has been doing. They've got a nice little range going up. They recently they were designing a bunch of Zodani and Imperial Marines rooted around the Fifth Frontier War.
Cool.
But yes, to do a proper Traveller miniatures game, I think these days it has to be plastic. So fingers crossed for a nice big box set, Zodani versus Imperial Marines, or maybe that space combat game.
Yeah, cool. All right. Let's talk about your upcoming stuff. What's your next epic campaign after Singularity?
The next, that won't be, in the very earliest, that would be next year, probably the year after, but that runs into the 50th anniversary. So if it doesn't fit into that, 2028. What we would like to do is something a lot lower key than these galaxy shaking events. We want extremely high stakes for the Travellers, but it's going to be something that absolutely nobody else cares about. So it's going to be all focused on them. I'm thinking something rather sandboxy, as we did with Borderlands, locking them into a specific region of space that we can super detail, that referees can actually keep all in their heads if the referees take an odd turn at the traffic lights. I think that's probably going to be the islands subsectors. We'll start to go into those in a major way. But as I say, that's going to be a fair way down the road. What we are working on right now, we've been working on an outline for the past few months. Writing will start on this in the next 2 or 3 months. So you might see it towards the end of this year or maybe early next. I came up with this idea for, we're calling it the Space Truckers campaign. The basic idea is each of the Travellers has their own small craft. It's going to be a really ropey one to begin with, something like a launch or a ship's boat. They're in a self-contained star system. The campaign will only be set in this single star system, so it makes things easy for the referee. And they're going to be basically owner operators of their own trucking businesses. It's going to go in two lines. Firstly, we're going to create a sandbox setting within this star system. So you've got all the different star ports and outposts and mining areas and what have you. And the players, the referee will be able to generate haulage contracts for them, and with various events taking place, and the players can route around trying to find work, trying to find the best routes to get from A to B while avoiding these asteroid showers or these pirates or what have you. They'll be able to make money that way to upgrade their ships, small craft, possibly buy better ones. In that sense, it's going to feel a little bit like Elite Dangerous, and they might get involved in things that aren't strictly hauling, but they still bring the credits in, so they'll take a look at it. But it also has the storyline to it as well, which will be basically like Pirates of Dranax. You can play just the 10 adventures in Pirates of Dranax, or you can really spread it out and do all the sandboxy, piratey, and political stuff. Same thing here on a smaller scale. But the storyline itself will deal with themes like the importance of truckers to local communities, the importance of worker unions when set against huge corporations, particularly the corporations that aren't even based in this star system. And it's not going to be completely serious all the way through. We're thinking very much themes of things like films Convoy, Smokey and the Bandit.
I was already ahead of you on that. Mercy sakes alive, looks like we got ourselves a space convoy, 10-4.
Exactly it. We've already penciled in some law enforcement character who's a bit rotund with his weird sunglasses, absolutely convinced the players have done something wrong, but is never able to pin anything on them. So yeah, the travelers will be space truckers. I'm kind of looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that sounds fun to me. Yeah, cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. All right, let's talk about the vehicle handbook update.
Yes. Now, we mentioned, we talked about the Great Rift update, how that was just a graphical update. Vehicle handbook isn't. That has been rewritten from the ground up. It's been done by Gear, who is an absolute fan favorite when it comes to the mechanical constructs within Traveller. He was behind the World Builders Handbook. And while the vehicle construction system will look and smell a lot like the current one, Gear just tore it all down and started all over again. It has got every option in the world in it. If you can think of a vehicle from a little rickshaw to a floating city, you can build it in this. There's all sorts of options he's put into this book. We have needed to pare some things down. So firstly, it is still very quick to use. Instead of spending 40 minutes trying to put a vehicle together, it still needs to be a system whereby you can create a car or a motorbike in 2 or 3 minutes. There's been all sorts of things that we've looked at and thought, yeah, that's actually probably got to go in a different book. For example, there was an entire chapter written about naval warfare on low-tech level worlds. That's good. We can use that. Probably not in the vehicle handbook if we don't want a 400-page book. So we have had to make some choices there. I also got a feeling that while the new vehicle handbook will have quite a few example vehicles in it, Gear's already written a whole lot of vehicles. I think there'll be a separate vehicle catalogue, but we'll have to see how that happens. We've gone through the first set of revisions for it already. Gear is currently patching everything together, fixing all the holes I created when I've just come along and said, no, we can't have this in there. So I'm hoping we'll see the final manuscript in a month or two, and then it goes to final testing and layout. You
Mm,
should see it this year.
awesome, awesome. What other products might get the update treatment?
Well, the crunch point, the two crunch points come from whenever a book gets to a stage where we think, okay, we've revisited a lot of territory in this book because of various supplements. Sometimes entire rule systems have been replaced. It's time to compact everything down into one single location. So things like High Guard and Central Supply, core rulebook, of course, are obvious candidates for update books into the future. In terms of those titles, um, our goal is, I don't know how realistic this is, but at the moment, if we release a new core rule book, we did it in 2022. The idea is it will be compatible with everything that's gone on before, but also if you've got the first core rule book of this edition, you will still be able to use that for all the books that get published in the future, one way or another. Um, a problem I can foresee with that is when we get to core rulebook 2051 or whatever it is, and we've made all these little changes throughout the lifespan of Traveller. Do we get into a kind of Ship of Theseus position where what we've got in the rulebook in 2051 has no relation to the one the first rulebook we published for this edition, and at
Hmm.
what point is it by default a new edition? I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah, how do you figure that? I guess like if it's more than 20% different, I mean, where's the threshold really?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because you're making these small changes all the way through the lifespan, because you're releasing these rule supplements that are adding their own systems, which may or may get incorporated into the core rules, um, I don't want to ever have to say, look, guys, you really need this core book update, because in the past we've said, look, you don't need to buy this. We've just released this brand new book, and I'm sitting here telling you you don't need to buy this. Um, at some point, maybe we do have to say it, or maybe we say, yes, you can use your core rule book update 2022, but you should probably have this 6-page PDF sitting next to you while you do it. So we
Hmm.
want to make it easy and smooth for people that are running their campaigns. At the same time, we don't want to force people to buy new books. Um, this is the problem when you look at Traveller as a kind of living system. The rules shouldn't be static. There's some things that will always be true. Roll 2 dice, try and get 8 or more after modifiers. That will, I think, always be part of Traveller. Everything else is probably negotiable.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, well, it's got to update and change over time, but if the last 50 years are any indication of the next 50 years, um, the the
But
end
that,
product
in a
is.
way, yeah, that's the wheel we were trying to break, because every time you have that big shock of a new edition, you risk alienating people.
Yeah,
And if the core system isn't broken, don't try and fix it.
right, right.
It's more a case of sanding off the edges, applying a bit of polish.
Hmm. Or responding to market changes. Maybe because when Traveler first came out, the only other game role playing game around was like D&D, maybe one or two others, but there wasn't a lot of experience with game mechanics and stuff. And in the past 50 years, we've come up with like the Boon and Bane system, the different kinds of Alternity had a system where you rolled different sized dice depending on the difficulty level.
Yeah.
So there's all these different kinds of I don't want to say like game mechanics that become popular, and you got to kind of be like, why don't we have that in our system? Is there a reason we don't have it, or could we use it? And
The
then make a
touchstone
value
is always
judgment.
does something new comes along, does it make the game better in any way?
Hmm.
Because if it doesn't, if it's just a fad, stay away. Let people copy travel and not the other way around.
Hmm. Hmm. Right, right, right. All right. Let's talk about. I've heard that. Well, you've spoken before that you want to convert Mongoose into a structure that is employee owned. Do you have any updates on that, or any plans on how that's
It's
going to work out?
Yeah, it's a process. I mean, we mentioned to Mark when we were looking at the property transfer of Traveller, we're setting up a mechanism whereby Traveller will end up being owned by the people producing it, and there will also be the ones that directly benefit from it. And I feel, perhaps naively, that this is possibly the very best way to make sure Traveller continues for the next 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, whatever. Let's try and create something that will stand the test of time.
Hmm.
Um, at the same time, I'm persuaded that there are many companies in the world, more so the large ones, that don't always treat their employees as well as they should. Um, if you're if you're looking at companies where their profits are running into the hundreds of millions or billions, and they have staff members who can't afford to buy their own homes, there's a problem somewhere along the way, and capitalism has got a little bit too far. So part of the idea of Mongoose is that people who work here should have the benefits of a very good work-life balance. They should have the expectation of, even if they're in their 20s, of owning their own homes, however modest they might be to begin with. Um, and I think ultimately, employee ownership has to be the way to go with that. So the people are who are doing the work are the ones who are benefiting the most. I mean, we're already in a position where, in terms of monthly spending, by far our biggest expenditure is paying creative people to create the games. Um, and I'm always trying to find ways to improve that further. For example, if okay, here's a silly example. If Disney comes along and says, we're kind of tired with the MCU, we want to do the Traveller cinematic universe. Here's 100 million as a down payment. There's going to be plenty more to come. That 100 million doesn't just disappear. I mean, obviously, it gets used to make improvements in the company, but um, that's not an amount of money that I would want to just take and sit on myself. I'm not looking for the big mansion in the country. I'm not looking for the three yachts. So let's make each of the employee millionaires. Let's do that straight off the bat. It's not as if they're likely to be suddenly going off somewhere because Disney's just promised us a whole bunch of more money.
Right, right.
Um, there's also, if I am honest, there's probably also a tiny bit of ego attached to this. I do like the idea of something that will continue long after I've gone. So I am looking at ways to encourage a culture within the company that not only benefits the employees, but also encourages them to build the next generation that comes after them and for them to pass it on as well.
Hmm.
The problem is when you give somebody something, you can no longer tell them what to do with it.
Right.
Um, so I mean, but all that aside, uh, I figured there's basically two things we need to do before we can officially become an employee-owned company. Firstly, the employees here, the staff here, have to be ready for it. They have to be able to run the company by themselves, and we've done all sorts of things to help them with that. They can absolutely run the company day to day for 6 months, a year with no input from me now. We need to start looking at the more strategic aspects of a running company. That's going to be the next hurdle. The second thing is I have to be ready for it, like possibly on an emotional level. I mean, this has been my life for a quarter of a century. It's
Mm-hmm.
not an easy thing to give up.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but we've already put things in place. I mean, if something were to happen to me 5 minutes after talking to you, um, they already get the company. It's written in the will. It's just not a perfect way of doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
there's various mechanisms and legal systems that need to be put in place. But the core of it is they need to be ready. I need to be ready. But every day we move at least a little closer to that.
Right. Right. All right. Yeah, at some point you might just decide, well, today's the day I retire.
What about that? There's various things we can do, like they can be handed the company whilst I still maintain an interest of it. And we've joked about how I'll be like 80-year-olds in some corner of the office, and they're all whispering each other. He thinks he's writing the next bestseller now. Yes, you're doing very well, Matt. So
Yes,
maybe that's how I end. And yeah, do you know, I'm happy with that.
here's
I
your
mean,
house coat and slippers, and here's a nice cup of tea and a pipe for you, Gramps. Now you keep writing.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it has occurred to me that ultimately there is something vaguely Marxist about all of this. I mean, we're literally talking about workers owning the means of production. But
Right.
what's interesting is it's doing it very much within a capitalist framework.
Yeah, I think
I'm not
employee-owned
sure about the philosophy
businesses
behind that one.
employee-owned businesses seem, at least in the U.S., to be pretty successful. Everybody has a personal stake in the success of the business, and how much they make as far as like bonuses and things, are directly tied to the success of the business. So,
And they get to
everybody.
decide those bonuses themselves. That's the big thing.
Exactly, and they can decide amongst themselves what's fair, what's not fair, and it's kind of like having the workers' union in house. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
um,
I mean, one of the things that came out of this is vast majority of small businesses, you have one or two people who own the company and they effectively act as dictators. So they
mhm.
walk into the office on Monday morning. I had this brilliant idea. Let's enact this. Whoops, it went wrong. We don't have quite so much money. We'll have to lose a couple of people, but don't worry, I've
Whoops,
got
it
that
went
money.
wrong. What's wrong with all of you?
But we stopped doing that some time ago. And what happens now is I come up with my great new spiffy idea, and I present it to them. And sometimes they say, "Yeah, let's do that." Sometimes they say, "Well, actually, that's a bit of a bad idea." Now, at that point, either um, I've come up with a genuine bad idea. It's difficult to come to terms with that, but it can happen. Or I simply didn't go into enough depth with it. I didn't figure everything out. And if I still truly believe it's a good idea, I'll go away, patch up my hypothesis, present it to them again. What they're doing there is error checking me.
Mhm.
And this did, I'm not going to go into politics here, but this did occur to me. This is a mechanism that certain governments, I'm thinking of one particular one in my own country, didn't do. They surrounded themselves with yes men, and there was
Mhm.
no one arguing against the leadership. Bad ideas are just going to get perpetuated there.
Yeah,
And you
right.
see this happening with small companies as well.
Hmm.
So that's an immediate benefit, but the root of it is every major decision in Mongoose now is effectively made by the staff. For example, I went up to them in one meeting and said, "Hey, we've got an opportunity to buy Traveller. What do you think?" So they discuss it, and they make the decision to do so. Now, it might sound like an obvious choice, but they knew that it would impact their own bonuses quite severely for at least a year. And they still thought, yes, this is a good idea because we're going to be more secure. There's going to be
Hmm.
less money going out in terms of royalties, and we end up owning Traveller
Right.
when everything gets passed to us anyway. I say every major decision is pretty much worked out that way. The metaphor I use for this now is you familiar with Catcher in the Rye?
Yes.
So you got the story of the the children playing in the rye fields, but it's on the edge of a cliff. So you got the guy standing there. As they come running out, they don't see the cliff. He catches them. That's me with them. I make sure they don't trash the company. They can. I let them make mistakes. I let them cost them a company money now and again. It's
Hmm.
fine so long as A, they learn something, and B, they don't cripple the entire company.
Right, right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think that's great. I've also heard that Mongoose has some pretty good employee perks like Pancake Day and things like that.
Yes. I mean the first most obvious one is the bonuses. We're very open with our the state of our bank accounts. I go through them with all the employees every week. This is what we had last week. This is what we got this week. I work hard. Or yay, we made some money. Brilliant. But coupled to that, we've also got the predictions. This is what we think. If all goes according to plan, this is what we'll have at the end of the month. This is everything we have to pay. This is what it costs to run Mongoose every single month. We know we need to put money into the war chest. We know we need to put money into, I don't know, the traveller fund or something. And whatever's left, this could be bonuses. What do you think? And they make the decision what bonuses to have and how large they should be. Sometimes it might just be a couple of £100 in a month. Sometimes it might be a couple of thousand. If somebody, um, if one of the licensees for Traveller or any of our other games has an unexpectedly good quarter and a whole sack of money comes in, that tends to go straight to the staff here. Sometimes they get paid more than I do.
Hmm.
I don't get those bonuses.
Awesome. What
Um,
other perks do you have?
um, when they say there's no such thing as a free lunch, we except here. We have the kitchen completely renovated, and so somebody cooks a meal for everyone else every day. The company pays for that. Reasons behind that is, firstly, it means they don't have to spend money on lunch anymore. So that's, a little saving. It adds up over a month.
Hmm.
Secondly, they're not buying takeaways anymore, so they're eating healthier. They can be mongooses for longer in life. We supply company phones. I don't know why every company doesn't do this, because mobile phone contracts, at least in this country, it might be a bit different in America, are really quite very cheap, even if you've got the latest phone. And as far as staff are concerned, there aren't taxed on that benefit. So again, it's another few quid they save every month.
Hmm.
We have a financial advisor on tap um, that we've primarily been using to figure out uh, how to um, how to get each of the staff to build up a big enough deposit to buy their own houses.
Hmm.
We had one lady buy house a year, 2 years ago. Another one is just about to move into their new home, and somebody else is going to be in a position to start looking for a house at the end of this year.
Oh, wow.
These people are all in their 20s,
Hmm.
which again, I don't know how it works in all areas of the US. People in their 20s buying their own houses, that's a big deal.
No,
It's
because well, here you got to come up with 20% of your down of the cost of the house for your down payment. There are some government subsidies, but they don't put much of a where I live in Santa Fe, the average house is almost $1 million. So ain't no 20-year-old, uh, coming up with a $200,000 down payment or whatever.
You see, I really don't think it should be that way. I mean, we could,
Mm.
start shaking our fists at the cloud. The world has gone wrong. But for in a small way, for a small number of people, we got the opportunity at Mongoose to change that. Um, and hopefully that sticks. I mean, I keep mentioning it to owners of other companies. Um, they're probably getting sick of me. Yes, you should be paying your staff more. Yes, you should. Why don't you just give your entire company to them? You don't need any more money. Um, but that's, I mean, part of the the term always used, going back to the employee ownership, the trick is to get people stop thinking like employees and start thinking as employers. Part of that is encouraging them to be more independent in their thinking, realizing that they've got the authority to do things. One of the foundations of that is if somebody hasn't got a driving license when they join us, we will pay for their driving lessons, we will pay for their test, and when they pass the test, we will get them their first car. Everyone here has a company car of some description, except me again. I don't have a company car. Muggins doesn't get that.
That sounds like a great place to work, honestly.
So there is a proportion of my time every week where I sit down and try and work out how can I make things better for the people here. I mean, we go on. Really got me started now. If a new film comes out, especially if it's a new Star Wars film, but we did it with Nosferatu. We book out one of the local cinemas, and there's like half a dozen of us sitting all alone in the cinema, but you don't get the people eating sweets or talking while you're watching the film. There's a wildlife park not too far away. We get the kind of behind the scenes tickets. You basically pick your favorite animal, scratch their fluffy head, and feed them. And it's just little things like that. It all goes to the philosophy. I've kind of very slowly, very dimly begun to work out over 25 years that if you've got a half decent business model, if you look after your customers and if you look after your staff as your two priorities, everything else takes care of itself. And that seems to be working.
I worked for a corporation, a government military contractor, but they had some really cool employee perks. Like they bought every year, I don't know if it was a sponsorship or whatever, but they bought like, I don't know, 30 season tickets to the zoo, and you could check them out anytime. You know, or they had 20 tickets to the musical theater, and anytime that, you know, or some nonprofit theater, and every time they had a show, you could go any night as long as someone else hadn't taken the tickets or whatever, you know. So some things people, you know, weren't interested in, so they turned out really not to be a perk. But some things like that were, you know, the zoo tickets or the going to a show or whatever, were things that were valuable to people. Going to the local science museum, they have grown-up night where they kick all the kids out and they let the adults go in and play with all the science toys, and they serve wine and they have a little string quartet or whatever, and meanwhile you get to play with all the kinetics toys, and there's not grubby kids running around.
Yeah, the big barrier I find to this is the tax man. I mean, if you'd go to the wildlife park or the cinema, that's not a problem. That kind of perk is built into the tax system. That's fine.
Yes.
It's when you want to start pushing the boat out. I've had conversations with our accountants before. What would happen if I flew everybody over to where is it, Anaheim, and we spend a week visiting the Star Wars theme park there? Can we call that work? Is that tax deductible? Turns out no, that'd be a benefit in kind, and all the staff get hit with massive tax bills. I mean, we have talked about visiting, was it the NASA Center? I mean, that space, that's connected to Traveller, right? That's claimable, surely.
Isn't it? I would think so. It might be. You know, a lot of times you just, in America anyway, we go like, hey, let's have lunch, and then, you know, we'll write it off as business expense, and then all you have to do when you go to lunch is say, hey, how's your business? Oh, it's good. How's yours? Mine's good too. All right, let's eat.
We did once pay for someone's degree in astronomy and planetary science. Send that off to the accountant. No, you cannot pay for someone's degree. That. I sent them a Traveller book. Yep, that seems legit.
I had a thing with my employees. If they maintain a B or an A at the local community college, I would reimburse their class expenses at the end of the semester. So that worked out pretty well. People like to be appreciated, and, you know, honestly, that stuff all feeds back and is valuable to your business. So in a way, it's kind of selfish, but it's at least done in a way that's thinking of the other person, the receiver.
Yeah, it comes down to the two things: take care of your customers, take care of your staff, and everything else. If you've got a half decent business model, everything else seems to fall in place. I mean, I am very much aware there are massive inefficiencies built into our current work practices. I mean, back in the day when we were doing D20 books, we had a very, very tight system. We were doing 3 or 4 books every single month. We could tell distributors what day a book would come out 6 months into the future, which made us very, very popular with them.
What happened?
Well, we made the decision. It doesn't have to be this way. Suppose instead of doing 3 or 4 books every month, we did 1 book every 3 or 4 months. Now we're now in a place where we're doing a little bit more than that, but spend more time on the books. It's not just about getting a new rule book out as quickly as possible. Let's make them as good as we possibly can before they get released. So we don't have deadlines anymore in the company. We have guidelines, and inevitably they are broken every single time. But I do think the books are better for it. It did make me think all companies, especially larger ones, are on a constant crusade to find efficiency throughout for every process they have. And I'm wondering whether efficiency isn't the key, it's effectiveness. You can have your inefficiencies if the effectiveness at the end makes it worthwhile. The big problem you have with larger companies is they have shareholders who demand the nice results at the end of every quarter, which means effectiveness can't work there.
Right. Well, their directive is not to produce a quality product, it's to maximize profits. So whatever they have to do that is what they do. And so, they cut corners or whatever.
I'm sitting here speaking. I am a capitalist. I run my own company. I don't think unregulated capitalism is necessarily the most awesome idea in the world.
Well, you end up with things like I see it in, well, we all see it in the software world, where they rush out a game. It's half baked. It obviously hasn't been tested. The basic functions aren't working. There's glitches. Why in the heck did they put out this? Is kind of how I feel about Starfield. Don't get me started. But basically, they
about Flight Sim 24.
they put this out and kind of left it to the community to fix, and that's poopy. You don't leave it up to the free labor of your fans to fix your product. Just because you're in a rush to get it out. The same thing with that Cyberpunk 2077 thing. They shipped it, and everybody's private parts was hanging out of their zipper, and it's like, did they not know that, or was that on purpose?
That was such a shame. That is such a good game now. I'm really very impressed with what they do.
Right. But it had a hard launch,
Oh yeah.
So all right, cool. That's all cool stuff. To be a Mongoose employee, how awesome.
Let's talk about. We're currently looking for a marketing person right now. So if somebody wants to come and join us.
All right. I don't know if they'll still be open 2 months from now, but say again.
Yeah. We haven't done any marketing for 25 years, so we figure we'll take a swing at that.
Might be a good time to start. What are your plans for the 50th anniversary? It's only 2 years away.
We've got very little that's solid at the moment. We figure we're probably going to be at Origins that year, because that was when Traveller was first released. What we actually do at Origins, we got no idea. At the moment, we're wondering, what I'm leaning towards at the moment is that we don't have a single day or weekend to celebrate Traveller's 50th. We do it over the entire year. So there will be, to begin with, there'll be something coming out every we'll do something cool every month, and then it'll go to every week, and then every day for a period. across the entire year. So I don't know, maybe by that time we've got our act together and we've actually got a traveler blog going on. So you'll get regular behind the scenes news or background lore updates, the old news bulletins. Maybe we could run something like that. We've been wondering about 50th anniversary products. Perhaps during that year, every book we release will get a kind of like gold foil 50th anniversary stamp on the cover.
That'd be cool.
We'll have some specific 50th anniversary releases. For example, one we will almost certainly do is reprint the original very first Classic Traveller box set. And Mark came up with the idea of, well, you could do that, but why don't you put that inside another box, and then you could fill that box with other cool, funky things. So maybe we have a Medal of Starburst of Extreme Heroism in there. Maybe we'll have some traveller passports that people keep asking us to do. Maybe we can have some of the supplements and adventures reprinted from the older lines. All at the moment, all these ideas are coming like two or three A3 sides of paper, just random ideas scrawled all over them. So we've got to distill all that and figure out exactly what we're doing. It would probably be very helpful if we had a marketing person to help us with this.
Awesome. Yeah, all right. Cool. That sounds like a lot of big plans, but you still have 2 years to work those out. So
disappear so quickly.
I know. So next year I'm going to like really press you.
Yeah, we got a solid idea for one thing. We need more. What I'm kind of thinking is we possibly, without giving too much away, divide that year into 3 phases. Traveller of the past 50 years, which will be represented by that Classic Traveller box set. Traveller of the present, which I, at the moment, am desperately trying to avoid that being core rulebook update 2027, because I don't know whether it actually needs it in terms of the game.
Right.
Maybe that will change, I don't know. But something to represent Traveller as it is now. And then at the end of that year, we do something that projects Traveller for the next 50 years. And I've got some ideas about that, but it's possible we won't even whisper anything about that until like a month or two before it's due for release.
All right. Let's see. I think I've hit all my regular questions that I had. You got a couple minutes to answer some silly questions from my table of traveler questions?
Absolutely.
All right, I prepared this D66 table of random traveler questions, and I'll ask you like 3 off of there. So the first one is going to be question number 53. If you could own a single piece of high-tech traveler gear in real life, what would it be?
I mean, my very first thought is a graph belt, but I've always thought the problem with that, without like combat armor or anything, is all the flies that you'd be getting in your face. Other than that, it's got to be a Type S Scout, isn't it?
I suppose so.
Be able to visit all the planets of the nearby stars.
All right, that's a good answer. All right. Next question. Question number 56. 5s are coming up a lot. If you had to put together a traveler crew of famous sci-fi characters, who would you recruit?
You see, my first thought is someone like Mal from Firefly, but do you actually want to be anywhere near him? Is the question.
It's kind of bossy.
Yeah, I mean, you could go straight to the top and say the Doctor.
All right.
But then he wouldn't really be part of my crew. I'd probably be part of his.
Do you have a favorite incarnation of the Doctor?
David Tennant.
David Tennant.
Hands down. Although Matt Smith, very close second. We'll need someone to deal with the rough stuff. So obviously you'd need James T. Kirk for that, who can beat any other Star Trek captain in a fist fight. He's the only one who's got a fighting move named after him.
Is it this one?
That's the one. The old James T. And possibly Picard for the political stuff. But we'll
all
shove him
right.
in front of all the first contacts.
Who's your science officer?
Now I'm thinking Babylon 5. Yep, we've got to have Ivanov on board because that would just be funny.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Marcus as well for the sardonic wit. And if you want constant amusement on the bridge, you put Londo and Jakar next to each other.
Oh, great! Yeah, that'd be.
You want Starbuck running your fighter wing. I'm getting too far into it now.
All right, that's a good crew. All right, let's check out the next one. Is 35. What's your go-to traveler character type? Scout, merchant, rogue, or something else?
Noble, specifically dilettante. I just like the idea of trying to create a traveler who's an absolutely objectively worthless human being. I like the idea of someone who is kind of like royalty, but it's a real backwater, no one's heard of kind of royalty. But they've become famous for being famous. If you kind of get my drift,
Like Paris Hilton or.
Oh yeah, definitely. So you're going to have high skills in persuade. You're going to have a very high social standing. Absolutely nothing else. You know, when combat breaks out, the first thing you do is call the police because that's what normal people do.
Right. I have a professor with no combat skills, so when fights break out, he's looking to hide under the table. Go find your own table. This one's occupied.
You do the old Samwise Gamgee thing, just hit someone with a frying pan.
Yeah, just try to look for improvised weapons. Let's do one more. What's your dream starship, and what would you name it?
Now, see, this is a nasty question because one of the things we do on our social media is put up a picture of ship, briefly explain it, and then ask people, what do you call it? And now you've just done that to me. See, on the one hand, you're either talking about something you can fly by yourself and with a few, possibly with a few friends, in which case I might go something like the Serpent class Scout. The Type S is good. Serpent just looks better. Plus, you've got the wings to play with, which is always fun. Or you go to the other end of the scale and just say, I want something big. And very possibly that would be the Deep Night Revelation, the big 75,000-ton cruiser that can go anywhere and do anything.
And what would you name it?
My mind's gone blank, sorry.
As you just start looking around the room, the pencil sharpener. All right, well, fair enough. All right, well, Matthew, I think we've come to the end of our yearly catching up, and I thank you again for being so generous with your time and being a good sport and supporting this event. So thank you very much, and thank you for your continued stewardship of Traveler from a fan to you. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, and please pass our thanks on to the crew.
Will do.
Before we go, tell me where people can find your products. Where's the best place to go and get information about your about Mongoose?
Absolute best place is our website, mongoosepublishing.com. We have our forums there. We're also available on just about every social media platform there is. We've even got somebody starting with the ticking and the talking. I don't understand it myself, but if you're under the age of 40, somebody might understand what that means.
Are they doing did they come up with traveler dances?
I will pass that on.
All right, man. All right, cool. Well, all right, folks. This has been my interview with Matthew Sprange for the Traveler Mayday 2025 event, and we look forward to seeing you all again next year. And until next time, my friends, happy traveling. Don't fly solo through the galaxy. Click like to join our alliance. Subscribe for your crew pass, and enable notifications to never miss an encounter. This journey is fueled by my patrons.
Thank you, patrons. Feel the thrill of discovery. Become a patron and join the adventure.